All right, first meeting of the year between the Commanders and the Giants this Sunday. New York is really beat up on their offensive line, and they have not designated Daniel Jones as out, even though he suffered the neck injury against the Dolphins and did not play against the Bills earlier this week. But at last check, wasn't cleared for contact. But I guess if they put him as questionable, then I guess it's a possibility. As we welcome in Jordan Raanan, who covers the Giants for ESPN. Great catching up with you, Jordan. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
What's going on, Bram? How we doing?
Good. What do you think about Daniel Jones? Are they just saying he's questionable, or do you think he might actually play?
I'd be surprised if he does get cleared, but Ryan Dable did make it seem like there was a possibility today, which did kind of surprise me. So,
Okay.
But he didn't take any team reps this week, so playing behind a battered offensive line, it would seem like a irresponsible move. So I would bet against it if I had to.
I mean, honestly, considering the state of the offensive line, which I want to talk to you about in a minute, it feels like they'd have a better shot with Tyrod Taylor anyway. I mean, do you agree with that?
Why?
Because
probably not. Daniel Jones is better. He's mobile. It's not like he's not mobile.
Yeah, but what I see him with Jones, and he's killed us through the years with this. These designed runs, he's great on these zone reads and all that stuff. He can kill you on that. But as an escape artist out of a pocket that's going to collapse consistently, I think I'd rather have a shot with Taylor, who seems to be a little better at that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, that's probably fair. But Daniel Jones is a better quarterback to make more throws, better throws. So I think their Giants are a better team with Daniel Jones. I mean, right now, I don't think it really matters. Like, everyone's like, Tyrod Taylor played well the other day. They still didn't score a touchdown. For, by the way, the third 3.5 games now, basically, they have gone without an offensive touchdown. He had 150 yards passing going to the founder. It's just, and I'm not saying it's him. He actually did play pretty well, but it just goes to show you what they're dealing with in regards to the offense and how it's almost untenable to run offense when your line is breaking down to the degree that they are at this point.
Yeah, I in the last segment, I kind of went through this for our listeners. We've had problems with the offensive line with injuries. We had 4 centers play last year, so we know this. But I don't think I've seen anything like this where left tackle's out, his backup's out, the backup to that backup is out. You're signing people off the street, and they're starting immediately at multiple positions. The center you drafted is out. I haven't seen anything like this. So, I mean, I know it's crumbled their offense. I don't even know what else to say about it, really.
Yeah, here's the thing is, okay, their offensive line was a huge question mark. I'm talking about the starters in the first place, right? And then you knew their depth was not good. And so now you have add that situation and to the fact that, okay, all these guys are injured on top of that, it gives you what you have right now. And it's been an offensive line that's been untenable. I mean, I know Sam Howell has been sacked more, but I can only imagine what Sam Howell would be doing behind this offensive line.
Yeah. Sam Howell's situation is 30 to 40% of them are him just hanging on to the ball too long, really. That's really what they are. With yours, when I watch, I'm like, whoever's back there doesn't have a chance. Like, it collapses so fast, they don't have a chance.
No, really, that's what it is. And it's like, man, you can't run consistent offense. I don't care who you are. I don't care what quarterback you are. Sorry, I don't care what quarterback you are. The reality is when it's breaking down that quickly and things just start moving so fast, when it's that consistent, you're just not going to be able to make plays consistently. And that's where the Giants are at right now. So Washington allowed the Giants to do much offensively in this game. And if they do, they have nobody to blame, but then to look themselves in the mirror and blame themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just made this case earlier. I said, look, we pay all this money to this front four. They have literally no excuse not to control this game. And if we walk out of this and didn't win because the Giants somehow moved the ball effectively, it's going to be a massive indictment on the Washington front and all those first-round picks that they have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the weird part is when I look at the Washington team from a distance, I look at their front four, and I'm like, those are 4 really good players. And then you're always sitting there looking like, well, you have those 4 good players, like your defense doesn't match what those players are, and it's like a consistent thing with them. You're like, how does that keep happening? What's the disconnect there? And especially from a Giant perspective, because the Giants haven't come in there with good offenses. The Eagles and the Cowboys have beat their teeth in because they dominate the Giants up front every time, and the Giants can't do anything. and somehow Washington's not able to do that. And you're like, wait, shouldn't Washington be able to do that too? They have the same strength as those Eagle and Cowboy defenses. So, yeah, it's on them if they don't dominate this game.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned the no TDs thing. They haven't had an offensive touchdown in a month. I'm sure it's got to be a thing. Like, what are the players saying about it?
Yeah. Yeah, Saquon was by the way, Saquon was injured for most of that, right? He came back last week. But he was like, oh, wow, it's over 200 minutes? Like, I didn't even realize it was that long. So they're hearing about it. They have everybody telling them, hey, you can't score a touchdown. You can't score a touchdown. I think it's starting to wear on them a little bit. We saw them at least this past week against Buffalo. I'm sure you guys watched that game.
Yeah.
They at least got into the red zone. That was, I guess, a step in the right direction. So I think they actually feel better about the offense this week, even though they're 205 minutes since scoring their last touchdown offensively. So I know it's a strange situation, but I feel like at least they've settled their offense a little bit, and Saquon certainly helps that.
Yeah, I like all the stats show it. Obviously, he's a great player, so it's obvious that they're different when he plays for them. I'm sure you must have written the piece about, I guess he was asked about the trade deadline. Again, second year in a row. Last year, they had a good record, so it didn't make any sense to move him. This year, they have a bad record. What is your sense of his future after an offseason where they were going back and forth about a contract?
Yeah, well, it's a really tough one because while I think there's probably people in the building that would want to do it from a business football perspective, I also think it'd be a tough one to sell to ownership, right? How are you going to sell to ownership? Hey, we want to move Saquon for what? I mean, what are you going to get for Saquon? A mid-round pick, a third-round pick, let's say? I think would be a pretty fair, good return. Like, I don't think you're getting much more than that in the last year of his contract. So at that point, like, what's the Giant product going to be for the rest of the year? That's going to be a hard sell. So I don't know. I have a hard time seeing it happen, even though football-wise and roster construction-wise, it might be the best move. And Saquon wants to stay, which I know you might be scratching your head. Like, why would he want to stay? They're not a very good team. They didn't want to sign him, but he has been clear from day one that he wants to stay. He has a family. He lives here. His parents' home is not too far away in Pennsylvania. It's a drivable distance. Like, it just works for him, and he wants to stay. So I'd be surprised if they did move him. It would probably take a really dynamite offer to make it happen.
Yeah, and I know he loves being a Giant, and he loves being there. After this offseason with the back and forth with the contract, though, what does he think his future is with the team?
Yeah, I don't really know the answer to that. He really deflects that consistently and says, I just got to worry about now. It doesn't do me any good to think about that moving forward because he knows the Giants have that franchise tag that they could hold over his head again if he wants. And I think he wants just at least the opportunity to go see, okay, what is my value on the open market? And that's essentially what he wants because he has this idea in his head of what he's worth. And I think the Giants and probably the rest of the league have a different version of what they think he's worth and what running backs are worth in general. But at least if he had the opportunity to go see what's out there, which I think he might get because he already was injured this year. Do they really want to use the franchise tag at like $13 million in the end next year on him as he's getting older, more miles, yada, yada, yada. So I think he just wants to, see what's out there for him.
Okay. All right, let me get into the head coach with you for a minute. Obviously, they had an incredible start last year, got to the playoffs, won a playoff game. Okay. There's a lot of reasons why his record is what it is right now that we went through, especially with all the injuries on the offensive line. Can you kind of just give me a sense of how everybody is thinking about Brian Daboll right now, and the front office for that matter, when you look at this team kind of from a an overhead view after what happened last year to how this one has started this year?
Yeah, I think the bloom is definitely off the rose, right? When you're 1-5 and up until the Buffalo game, they were non-competitive. So that reflects on the coaching staff. That reflects on the front office, the roster they put together. That was always my biggest concern was, is there enough depth on the roster? Like, is the roster really good enough from top to bottom? And I think it was their concern too, and they knew it. And then when you start getting injuries, you're seeing the result of that. And so this team, I do believe this team, and Joe Shane, who's the general manager, and Brian Dable were very realistic, right? They made the playoffs last year, but they knew they weren't a great team, a great roster. They overachieved last year. Now we're seeing that as they play a harder schedule, as everyone's injured. So I think people have definitely come off the fact that these guys are geniuses, right? That the horseshoe kind of fell out of their mouth here. But at the same time, I think they're still willing to give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. But let's see where the season goes, because Washington Jets here next 2 weeks, they lose those two games and sitting at 1-7. I don't think, people are going to be willing to be so patient for that much longer.
And as you know full well,
I'm talking fans, by the way, not ownership.
Well, that's what I'm curious about with the ownership, because they have changed coaches a lot since Tom Coughlin left. So this is year 2. They have made changes. I think it feels like, for me from afar, it's different with this particular group, but you could tell me otherwise. Like, do you think if this thing goes really sideways and doesn't turn itself around, that there would actually be some danger for him?
They have more cachet built up, right? Because they made the playoffs in year 1. And but let's be honest, each of the last, every coach that came since, McAdoo, Shermer, Judge, everyone was 2 years and out. So for me to sit here and say they absolutely won't lose patience at the end of year 2 would be silly, because I'm looking at the track record. Now, they did build up the credibility by making the playoffs, so they have a little more leeway, I think. But you never know. I've seen things go totally sideways. I haven't been in playoffs in his first year, but things went so far sideways in year 2 that Ben McAdoo ended up getting fired before the end of the year, remember? Before that season was even over. So something crazy would have to happen, in my opinion, but I'm not going to rule out that something crazy will happen, because I've seen it before.
Yeah. All right, well, then I'll leave you with this, because this is my little crazy theory at this point, which is we all know how much Bill Belichick has discussed his love of that franchise. And for the first time in his life, the first time ever, there are people openly talking about whether it's time for him to leave New England. So do you think that there is even a remote possibility that if he was available, that the Giants would be interested in him?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because we know what the Giants organization thinks of Bill Belichick. And we also know what Bill Belichick thinks of the Giants organization. Like, he holds it in high regard because he had spent a lot of time there. At the same time, if you're talking about the Giants needing to completely rebuild, and Bill Belichick, I don't know his exact age off the top of my head. Bram, what are we at? Low 70s?
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm.
Mid 70s?
Yep.
Like, he's older, right? He's in his 70s, I believe. Like, is that really the route you want to travel? Now, I wouldn't completely rule it out, because if Bill Belichick calls and says, I'm interested, don't you have to kind of at least listen?
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting scenario. I would say it probably wouldn't happen. I also don't think that Bill Belichick thinks the Giants are the most well-run franchise in history, and he'd want John Mara breathing down his throat. Because remember, his relationship was always with Wellington Mara, right? John was always just his son who was born into the business. So I'm not sure Bill Belichick wants to be taking, everyday advice and having to speak every single day about what he's doing football-wise to John Mara. So I would, if I had to, I would think it's a really big, long shot, but not something it's not a crazy theory, I'll tell you that. And I do like crazy theories, though.
All right. He's 71. And if he did do it, he would ultimately break the all-time wins record as head coach of the Giants. So that'd be incredible.
It would be. It would be interesting, but from a business standpoint, I don't think hiring a then 72-year-old to start your rebuild is probably the way to go. But hey, this hasn't been an organization that's been sound with their decision-making for quite a while, so who knows?
Jordan, as always, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you Sunday up at MetLife. Appreciate it.
Look forward to it, Bram. Have a good one.